What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. You already know when it gets to this time of the week, myself, Nicholas Moreano, and Herb Howard got you covered with all the latest Bears news, get you caught up throughout the week. And, we have some special announcements that we want to, just share on this episode. First off, Herb, it's awesome having you here, bro. Every single week, I look forward to this day specifically.
For
So,
sure.
hey, I'm glad to have you here. And from now on, when you see this show pop on your feed live every Friday, it will be known as the Nick and Herb Show moving forward. We settled on a name. There it is.
Shout out to everybody who was helping, man. Shout out to everybody that was sending suggestions about things we should call it. Y'all had some good ones. Nick and I couldn't decide, and so at the end of the day, oftentimes the best answer is probably the most simple answer. And so that's Nick and I'm Herb, and welcome to the Nick and Herb Show.
Yeah, sometimes simplicity is the best option here. Like, obviously, you can get really creative with stuff, but hey, like you said, you're Herb, I'm Nick. We're doing a show, the Nick and Herb Show. So that is the first exciting piece of news that we have to share with you. And then Herb, I want to let you kind of share the second piece because obviously this is a big one as well.
Yeah, it's big, man. I've actually never had the experience. I haven't experienced this, and so I'm really excited, man. Coming up this coming week, the NFL world will descend upon Indianapolis for the scouting combine. Nick and I will be there together, bringing you all kind of content throughout the week, different conversations with different people from the Bears and just from around the league in general. I've been told that it is the premier networking event on the NFL calendar. I have gone down to the owners' meetings, the league meetings, and that was a great experience. The entire league in one space, and you bumping into owners at restaurants or at bars, or walking through the lobbies and the different meetings and media availability. And so I'm looking forward to what that's going to be like in Indy. Like I said, it's going to be my first time. Nick, I know you've been down there before, but I'm very much looking forward to it. And I'm super excited that we get to cover it together, man.
Yeah, Herb. It was super exciting to get the news that we'll both be down there. But I'm just really excited for you, Herb, to be down there. It is like look, I've never been to the owners' meetings, but I would assume it is a lot like this, and then
Yeah.
just do it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days straight, where we're out at the late hours of early
Yeah.
mornings of
I he-
days,
I
and
hear it can get I hear it can get pretty late out there, man.
it could get pretty late. So not a lot of sleep, but a lot of work will be done. And we'll get a lot of good content for you. And you can check out all that here on the Bigs YouTube channel and just obviously the socials for the Bigs channel as well. But yeah, it's gonna be a great time. It's a great time for the NFL world to just connect in Indianapolis, where I'm so glad, like, there was speculation. Are they gonna move it to Los Angeles? I know it was in consideration. Honestly, once you see her, this is the perfect spot to bring the entire NFL world. It's kind of weird, Indianapolis, but it really is. It's a good location where not everything's too spread out. There are places where you can be, hang out, but also, get some intel on like certain things that are going to be happening in the NFL calendar, whether it's free agency, the draft prospects that will be there, but just a lot that can be gained. And I'm really excited that you're going to be down there, and I'm excited that we're going to be down there getting some great content.
Nah, man, it's gonna be super dope. Definitely looking forward to it, man. We definitely gonna bring y'all some dope content um here on the Bigs page. Make sure y'all stay locked into our YouTubes just for all the random tweets that come out and just interactions we may have, stuff that pops up, man. So definitely looking forward to that, man. It's gonna be a great time all week down in Indy. Shout out to all them young dudes, man, that's getting a chance to impress 32 NFL teams for a chance to realize a lifelong dream for many of them, man. I know a lot of people uh, critique the combine and the process, and rightfully so.
Mhm.
It's a bit of a thing the way those kids get poked and prodded and displayed and all that. We can get into that another time, but certainly it's a dream come true for a lot of those kids, and hopefully they get able to put on their best performance and make some money for themselves this coming week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the biggest job interview there is in football. Like, all these
Yeah.
guys are going out there, not only on the field performances, 40 times, things like that, but what they do in those interview rooms. And we know that the Bears are really big into that, learning about the person in addition to the player and what they can do on the field, but it's a person and who they're going to bring into the locker room. So a lot of these guys have a great opportunity to showcase who they are, what they can do, and what they can bring to a football team. But we do have a
Let
couple
me
of days before we get to the combine. But we have some great topics that we want to discuss in the
Let me ask
meantime.
you this right quick though.
Yeah.
While we on that, those people, those personalities, and the like you said, we know how the Bears like to get into, who is the person that we're bringing into our building. Are the Bears better positioned now to maybe absorb a, let's say, borderline personality than maybe they were a couple years ago? You go back to the Jalen Carter situation where they didn't feel like they could absorb him as a person, despite his potential as a player. Do you think the Bears are better positioned now to absorb that type of personality should that arise? And are there any players like that you see, on your draft board? I know you do a lot more work on the college kids than I do. Are there any players that you think may be in that mold where say, hey, here's a really good prospect, but there are some red flags or at least some question marks on the personality side, and maybe you should take them off the board?
Both really good questions there, Herb. Are they in a better position? I think why, I mean, I wonder, going back to like the staff that couldn't, think that Jalen Carter wasn't a fit. And there was a lot of things that actually happened to him that combine week. The
Yeah.
whole incident with, someone dying in the car incident, and then also the actual on-field performance that he had at the combine weren't
His workout
great.
was terrible too, right?
Yeah, so there are two things going on there. Are they better equipped? I would like to say they are. Just looking at, and we are going to talk about this full coaching staff that is in place, because I think there are a lot of people that are in positions for the first time, but they are mixed with some veteran leadership in other positions. So I guess depending on the position that they draft, they could be more equipped to handle that certain type of player. But I just think too, we're looking at, okay, the one maybe benefit of having like 8 guys as captains is that you do see guys as being leaders in that room. I do think that number should be 4, and that's it. You stick with 4, and that's probably it. But I would think that the Bears view right now, Ryan Poles would view this roster as it stands today as having a core group of guys that, regardless of who you brought in, what kind of background they have, they would still find a way to succeed on this team. But I mean, it all depends on what it is that maybe Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson are questioning with a particular player. But I think they are more equipped now at this point in time than they would be, 2 years ago when Jalen Carter was coming out.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to that question. And then in terms of players right now, I couldn't give you one offhand of like who is a guy that really needs to nail the interview process down because of things that they've done in the past. But I think that's the benefit of the combine too. We're going to learn more about like some of those guys and, how important it was to, nail that part of the process so that they can raise that draft stock and be more viewed as a capable draft pick for not only one NFL team, but for more teams and broaden themselves. But what do you think about, like, especially that first part of the question? Are they more equipped to handle a guy that maybe has a little bit more baggage off the field, or has something that they need, a team just needs to know that they can handle that type of player?
Yeah, man, I was always kind of skeptical of that idea in the first place. I don't know that we can, that we're in a place to be able to bring in a guy like Jalen Carter. And I'm just using him because obviously he was so linked to the Bears, and like you said, he had the off the field incident and then the workout. But I think that for me, if you believe in your program, if you believe in what you're building, the culture inside your building, then I don't think that you should be afraid to bring people into that. And you would like to believe that your culture will have more of an impact on the individual than the individual would have on your overall culture. You know what I mean? And I think you should be in a position to say, I can manage this as a GM, as head coach. And for me, when you are the GM or you are a head coach that says, ooh, I don't know that I can deal with this type of player, then what am I ultimately saying about me? You know what I mean? I think that it's a football team. You're going to have a lot of different personalities, going to have a lot of different backgrounds, and you got to find ways to manage them. You got to find ways to reach the individual while also advancing the collective. And I think that's just a part of the job. And so this idea of shying away from players like that is not really something that I subscribe to, whether you're talking about, some of the greatest players of all time, like, Lawrence Taylor or some guys like that, or just talking about like young knuckleheads like Tyreek Stevens. It just, you're gonna have some of these types of players, and you have to be able to manage that. you talk about not being able to manage Jalen Carter. Well, I don't know what Jalen Carter's done. You know what I mean? Especially not since he's been a pro. I haven't heard anything. And actually had the night with the drag race that tragically ended in the loss of
Mhm.
life. And he wasn't able to compartmentalize and manage that well enough to stay on top of his workout. And then that showed at the combine. But aside from that, I don't know what he's done. But then you flip and you look at Tyreek and you're seeing his immaturity and his personality traits show up on a consistent basis, actually costing you on the football field. And so it's like, how do you go about making the evaluation that one kid can't come into this locker room and the other one can? It's it's a tough thing. You got to be able to manage them both. I think Tyreek is a phenomenal talent and a pretty good person. He's got to get the maturity issue and the professionalism down pat to reach his full to reach his ceiling. But I think that says more about the organization and the individuals in terms of leadership from coaching standpoint and front office standpoint than it does about the player. So I've never really been oh, you can't bring this person in. Like now you talk about on the pro side, you talk about like the Nate Davises of the world, that's more so of a you can't bring that person in. If they're old,
Mhm.
they've been in the league and they're old franchise and they're old head coach, like, yeah, they don't work hard, they don't practice, the work ethic isn't there, the commitment isn't there. Those are reasons to say no. But you're talking about a knucklehead kid coming out of the draft, I think you should be able to bring them into your program and show them what it means to be a Chicago Bear.
Those are really good points, Herb. And I wonder too, for the Eagles situation in bringing in a guy like Jalen Carter. I mean, there's just so many veteran and established, also just defensive linemen on
Sure,
that
they
team. The
had
guys that
Fletcher
are going to be
Cox
in the
and
yeah,
Brandon Graham, and they had a
guys
lot of
that
vets.
he's going to be around. Like that's who Carter's going to be around. For the Bears going from 2022 to 2023 when Carter was in that draft, they didn't have Montez at that point. It was DeMarcus. I think what DeMarcus Walker was your leadership veteran presence in the defensive line room.
Yeah.
So again, I see exactly what you're saying, and I also see like maybe why the Bears just felt like they weren't in a position. But that's also a reflection on you. Do you not, as a coach, can you not handle that? Like, and again, at the end of the season, what did a lot of players say? They wanted enforced discipline from whoever that next coach is going to be. So I think that's also going to be why the Bears this time around, if that coaching staff can enforce that discipline, have accountability when players are not doing what they need to be doing on a consistent basis, if they can show that they can do that, then they can draft a player that maybe has quote unquote these off the field things that just need to be evaluated, and that when you get into a locker room like Chicago's, like it's still going to work out. But it's fascinating. That's why this draft process, you could see one player so high up on the board for one team and then not even be maybe in consideration or way lower on another
Yep.
one because of those character traits or whatever, however you want to call it. But it is a fascinating part of the process, no doubt about it. Herbert, let's kind of move this conversation because let's start with most recently what kind of just happened with the Bears as we're getting everybody caught up to date at this point in the week. But Matt Feinstein,
Yeah.
who is in the Bears organization, he is basically the guy that manages and the salary cap, negotiates contracts, a huge portion, a huge role in this Bears organization. He joined in 2022 and he was just promoted to vice president of football administration. The team announced on Friday. This is a guy that maybe the casual Bears fan, like maybe hearing the name Matt Feinstein for the first time, they're just scrolling through Twitter. But if you're looking at, like, there are things that Ryan Poles obviously has not done well since he's become a general manager in 2022. But I would think that when you look at maybe just the cap situation the Bears have been in and how they've been able to manage the cap, especially what they had to take over when Ryan Pace's time was done. There was a lot of contracts with dead cap, a lot of things that they had to clean up. I would say that the cap situation that the Bears have had since Ryan Poles has been here has been a plus, and I think Matt Feinstein would play a big part in why that has been the case so far.
Yeah, you got to have somebody in that role that understands how to meet short-term needs with long-term goals. And I think he's done a really, really good job of that in terms of the way they go about, drawing up these contracts that don't put the Bears in a bad situation going forward, that leave them some space to maneuver when they need to. And I think it's one of the main reasons why the Bears are sitting here in a critical offseason having the resources that they need to be able to bring in some key acquisitions. So I think he's done a really, really good job at it. One thing I also thought as soon as it came across my email was that Kevin Warren really likes vice presidents. Like he really likes the title of the Bears got about 12 vice presidents, man. They got them, just so many different titles. Like Tanisha Wade, vice president, and you got who else? There's so
there's a lot
many.
of vice presidents. Yeah.
There's a lot of vice presidents on within this Bears organization. I think it's a good way to acknowledge somebody and say, "Hey, we really, really appreciate the work that you're doing and that you have done. Here's a raise. Here's a elevated title. You now get to do largely what you were already doing, just as a vice president." And so I think it's really, really cool. I think it's a great way to acknowledge people for the work they have done in your building and to show that you really, really value them. I don't know that Feinstein's job changed a whole lot today than it was yesterday, but I imagine he'll get a bigger check and a new placard on the outside his door
Yep.
or whatever. But I think since Kevin Warren has gotten here, we've seen this, vice president role be or title be placed upon a
Mhm.
lot of people. And so just the structure, it's just interesting to see how they continue to go about structuring their leadership group since he's been here.
No doubt. Okay, so I'm like, okay, there is a bunch of vice presidents, and
They got a lot of
I
VPs, bro.
yeah. So I did like a control F on the computer just to on the Bears front office to find the word vice president in people's titles. 14 came up here. You have Liz Geis, EVP of People and Culture and Chief Human Resources Officer. Karen Murphy, EVP of Stadium
Yeah.
Development, Chief Operating Up. There's a list. So when Herb's saying like there's a lot, there is a lot of vice presidents. And now there's one more added to the group. I don't even think this accounts for Feinstein. I don't believe it does. So add maybe 15
Maybe
people
15
on there.
VPs in the building.
Exactly. So again, I think that has been a positive for the Bears cap situation. But yeah, Matt Feinstein, I agree with you. His role now, adding this vice president title, doesn't really deviate or change very much from what he had been doing. He just got to continue doing that. And with this free agency coming up, I think it's a good segue to talk about just some cut candidates. As Matt Feinstein, the Bears are looking at potential guys that the Bears may look to cut to save cap to maybe
Gotta
sign
balance them
bigger.
books.
They got to bounce the book. Exactly. So let's look into that, Herb, because I think there's been a lot of discussion as of late, like who will be on this team in 2025. I think for the most part, you're going to see a roster that's very similar last year. I think in the trenches is where you're going to see a lot of change, though. But for the most part, that team that ended 2024 is going to be a big part of who the team is in 2025. But there are a couple of players that I think we can debate here whether or not they are going to be on this roster. One guy that I think is like not debatable, and not unless you have pushback on this, Herb, Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett is somebody that if you cut him pre-June 1st, you're saving $5.5 million and $1 million in dead money. Do you think there's any world in which Gerald Everett is back on this football team? Maybe Ben Johnson sees him in a way better role than Shane Waldron did, even though Shane Waldron had him back when he was in Los Angeles, couldn't find a way to make that work. Gerald Everett, is this guy cut or is he coming back on the Bears in 2025?
Yeah, I don't see the role matching the costs, right? I think you
Yeah.
can look and into the later rounds of the draft and find some tight end depth there. You could look, into free agency or whatever. So I think that if you're talking about expanding Cole's role into, like a Hawkinson or
Sam Laporta,
what's
like he had in.
Sam Laporta, right?
Yep.
So if you're thinking about that with Cole, then I don't know that you're also going to be wanting to pay a veteran price tag for another one when you could probably draft one in those mid to later rounds, or even find one as a free agent. So I don't see a roll back for Gerald Everett. I think another
Yeah.
team will value him more.
Yeah, neither do I. And I when they made that signing, I remember like, oh, I completely understand it. It's the guy that he's not going to be your featured tight end. He is a compliment to Cole Kmet, but I thought it made a lot of sense when they made the signing. And
Yeah,
then just as the season played out, even that first game, like Gerald Everett outsnapped Cole Kmet that first game. And
by
that
a
I
mile.
remember, yeah, like that was why is this happening? Like I know
Yeah.
signing Gerald Everett was I thought a good move at the time, but not that good of a move where you're outsnapping your number one tight end. Before I actually just name like some of the guys, is there anybody that you want to bring up that is a cut candidate, or we could just keep kind of going through the list of guys and debate whether or not they will be on this team? Does anybody come to mind though for you?
No, man, we could just roll through them, but you start to
Okay.
think about guys like Kevin Byard, some of those veteran guys. You say, well, I think they can still help us. I think we can bring them back. But then
Yeah.
you get into the, like I said, just the cost versus the role and trying to balance that out.
No, okay. So that's somebody that I do want to go. Let's go right into that discussion right now. Kevin Byard, you cut him pre-June 1st. You're saving 7 million in the cap, 1.5 in dead money. I did just a show earlier this week and he was brought up, and I think that come 2025, Kevin Byard is still on this team. I think they do
Yeah,
see value in having a guy like him. And yes, the cap saving is 7 million, but unless they have identified already a alternative option that's going to be far less of a price tag than a Kevin Byard, then yes, of course you can go that route. You can, cut him and go a cheaper option. But you also just need some sustainability and consistency on the back end. I thought Kevin Byard provided that. Like there weren't a lot of plays where you're seeing the defense get blown off over the top where it's his responsibility. Maybe there's some other things that happened in communication wise where there were
sure.
some big plays, but for me, I think there is still value of having Kevin Byard. And I wonder, as the Bears are assessing this particular player, like how much does Jaquan Brisker's uncertainty like factor into this as well? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But for me, I still think Kevin Byard will be on this team. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I think that stability is important, man. I think, having a veteran guy back there that you can trust, that you can depend on, that can lead the communication, that can get guys lined up. He's also a guy that can come up and run support just as
Yep.
well as he can drop back in pass coverage. And so I think that he still adds immense value to this team. And to move on from him, you would have to be pretty confident about how you've gone about replacing him. And so if you can find maybe a top safety falls to you in the draft, maybe the Bears go about the business of saying, okay, well, they end up signing Trey Smith and Drew Dahlman, and they feel
Mhm.
like they can get that left guard with one of those top two picks that they have, and then now you got maybe one of your top safeties on the board sitting there for that second pick that you got in the second round. You say, I think we could go ahead and make that move here. Then okay, then I can see that. But then you brought up Jaquan Briskin. I think that also factors into it. I don't know how certain you can be in terms of his dependability going into this season. I think that also has to factor in. You talk about still having a really good secondary. You end up having to swap out both safeties, and now you've created more of a problem than you solved. And so, unless you're able to definitively say, here's our next safety, we feel really, really good about it because maybe we drafted him in the second round or something like that. Other than that, I think it'd be wise to bring back Kevin Byard. He had a lot of production last year, and I think he can still be a really, really good player for you on the back end.
I have the same thinking here, and I'm trying to go through and just see some of the top safety potential free agents as I'm kind of looking at PFF and where they have their rankings. Javon Holland from
Yeah,
Miami,
he's a good player.
25 years old, good player. And as I'm kind of scrolling here to see where, again, just where other players are ranked here. Well, that's the biggest one right there. So again, it depends on one. It's going to be that price tag. If you can get a guy like Javon Holland who is younger, and it becomes a price that you're comfortable with. Okay, I can see that. Especially if you want to get still a young ascending player at that position. But for me, I still again at what's today's date? We are February 21st. Kevin Byard, I think, is still in the mix to be on this team in 2025. Another guy
Yeah,
that's been like I don't know, depending on who you talk to, definitely in consideration of being cut, DeMarcus Walker. And for me, I mean, I think he's had a little bit of I don't know if the right word's polarizing time since he's been here because maybe you wanted to see more sack production or just even more production in general out of a guy that does provide versatility, can line up on the end, can line up inside, and you just wanted maybe him to be a little bit more of a factor when he signed that 3-year, $20+ million deal.
Yeah.
But his cap saving, 5.25 million dead money, just little less than 700,000. For me too, I felt like DeMarcus was still going to be a guy that is on this team this upcoming season. I think that when you look at Dennis Allen and just kind of what he can utilize in a guy like that can play outside, can play inside, and just looking at how what we learned from maybe the Super Bowl and the Eagles defensive line, they just have waves of guys that you can count on. I
Yeah.
think I would put DeMarcus Walker as someone that you can count on, especially if he's coming in on that second wave after you find another defensive end. And then even maybe, there's another wave of guys that you also, the third wave. Like I like having that flexibility with the DeMarcus Walker. What about you, Herb? Is he a guy that does end up getting cut, or where do you see him?
Yeah, I thought DeMarcus had a really good year for the Bears last season. I really, really do. I know, the sack numbers aren't there, and I never really expected them to be there. I mean, I think
Mhm.
when he was in Tennessee, I think he had his high was like a 6.5 or something like that. I want to say it was, and so I don't know that he's that type of dynamic, sack production type of player. But I do think that he's a really, really good player to have as a piece on your defensive line. He can set the edge in the run game. He's competitive. He's a vocal leader for the team. And I thought that he was one of the more consistent pieces that they had on that defensive line throughout the entirety of the season. And he did make some splash plays as well. So I think
Yep.
he's a piece that you would want to keep around. And again, like I was saying with Byard, I don't know that you want to go about creating a problem just for the sake of doing it. Like you're creating a need just for the sake of doing it and without replacing them. Now, do you hope that Austin Booker continues, his development and becomes a difference maker on that defensive line this year? Certainly he shows some flashes and he has the tools to be somebody that you want to depend on. And obviously they're going to have to bring in more talent. We know that free agency, the draft, we know they have to have some type of player acquisition on that side of the ball in terms of the defensive line. But I think that DeMarcus Walker is a really, really good piece that you can utilize up and down the line of scrimmage. You mentioned Coach Allen coming in and the versatility that he likes to call his defenses, and I think DeMarcus Walker should be a piece that he could utilize.
Yeah, this is a guy last season. I'm just looking at some of his stats that he had: 39 total pressures, 4 sacks, 23 hurries. Also somebody that, again, like we were just talking about, lined up on the end, can line up inside. And I think that year that he had in Tennessee, where it was 6.5, 7 sacks, whatever it was, all of those came on as an inside interior defensive
Hmm.
lineman. So
Hmm.
again, it does show what he can do. I think look, he if the Bears do what they should do this offseason and do add another defensive end, another starting caliber defensive end, it's good to have a guy like DeMarcus Walker not have to be that guy, but can
The
just be a
right.
compliment
Yep.
to whoever that is that they bring, a compliment to obviously Montez Sweat, and see what you
Yeah.
could like I'm thinking of a lineup: Montez Sweat, Jervon Dexter, DeMarcus Walker, whoever the next edge rusher is. Like
Yeah.
that seems
Yeah.
enticing to me.
Yeah, then you have those waves you're talking about, like you talk about in Philly, and you still got
Yep.
Austin Booker to come in and use his speed rush and all. Like you still have all these guys you can bring into this rotation, and you start to build up this entire unit where you feel good about 7, 8, 9 guys. And you're like, okay, we can stay fresh and we can get after the opposing team's quarterback.
No, I like that. Yeah. Okay. There's two, well, I guess three more people that I do want to bring up here. Uh, Cairo Santos. Are we cutting Cairo Santos to save 2.08 million? Like I've seen some Bears fans are like, yeah, you can. I think the biggest thing they have against Cairo is the leg strength. Like
Right.
this guy, when it gets to 50 plus, you're probably not as comfortable with him. But what was it that he kicked at to beat the Green Bay Packers? Wasn't that a 53
51,
yarder?
53
51, somewhere around it. I'll make sure to get that right. But like when he needed to kick 50 plus, he was able
in
to
Lambeau in
do that.
January.
Exactly. So I don't, you know what? That's a guy that had 51 yards. You're right there, Herb. That's why we have you here, because you correct me when I'm wrong. But That's a guy that I think knows how to kick at Soldier Field too. Like
Hmm.
that's valuable in itself. We've heard Richard Hightower, talk about the difficulties, what it's like to kick there. Cairo's talked about it many times before. And so if you just bring in another guy for the sake of having a bigger leg, well, you better hope that big leg is accurate because you
Yeah,
can have a
man.
big leg and just misfire. So I'm not for cutting Cairo Santos.
No, I don't like that just for the sake of doing it. And I think that people live in this, utopian type world where, oh, I want everything. I want the kicker
Mhm.
who's extremely accurate, and I want the kicker with the big leg up to 65 yards. It's like, yeah, me too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, same.
I want that too, right? But what I want more than anything is somebody that's going to be consistent, that I can depend on, who knows how to kick in the elements that is the Soldier Field, right? Like you got to be able to kick in Soldier Field. You know how that wind swirls down there. You know how it can completely change from 1 second to the next, and Cairo understands that, and that to me, I value that a lot. You also got to start thinking about now who's your head coach. Ben Johnson's your head coach. Like, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of 55-yard field goal attempts anymore. Those fourth and shorts are going to become conversions, or at least fourth down attempts. And so, you get right on the edge of that scoring range, and he's going to be like, no, we going to keep this thing rolling. And so I think you're going to end up with a lot more field goals that are, 47, 48 and below, because he's going to continue to push the line, and then you get to a fourth down, 4th and 8 situation where you're at the 30 or whatever, then you go ahead and kick it. But on that fringe, I think he's going to be more aggressive than we've seen in the past anyway, and so I think it's more valuable to have Cairo's dependability from inside 50 than it is for me to say, man, I wish we had a kicker that could hit it from 55 on a consistent basis. I think it also matters that Coach Hightower's coming back. I think he likes Cairo,
Mhm.
and so I think his voice will matter in that conversation as well. And so, no, I don't just getting rid of Cairo because you want a bigger leg could create more of a problem than it solves.
Yeah, like as Bears fans, like you can't have it all now. I mean, you've been used to not having, much of anything. Like
Remember, we
Cairo, I
ran
think
Robbie out of town.
exactly.
Like Robbie had that bad year, and I listen. I was at that San Francisco 49ers game. I think Robbie missed two, and I was sitting in the end zone when he missed the game winning. The ball came, and I was like, God, dog, Robbie, what's up? Has he lost it? And we were all like, I think Robbie might have lost it, and then sent Robbie to San Francisco, and he continued to be Robbie. And it's like, dang, now we cycling through kickers, and we all know double doink, and it's like, oh, Robbie could have still been here for that. We might have went on a Super Bowl run with that 18 team. So I'm not for running Cairo up out of here.
No, yeah, that's a good point. And what was it? Augustus Silence, like the whole like thing that they had with all the kickers coming into, was that
That was
Bourbonnais at the time or was that hell? So I don't even remember. I wasn't there at that point covering the
they brought
team.
all those kickers in. It was like every day was just talking about the Bears kicker, the kicking competition. It's like, oh my God, can we stop it?
Don't let
Can
that
we
be a
stop it?
discussion. Yeah, Cairo Santos makes the discussion of the kicker. Honestly, you're not having too much of a discussion. It's just you're feeling pretty good about Cairo Santos. So we're in the same line of thinking there.
Want to say
There
thanks to Jason coming in with the super chat
oh
499.
yeah,
Appreciate you. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Jason, you have a great weekend as well. Thank you so much for the super chat. We appreciate that.
we definitely do. And Herb, I appreciate you. So for not that anybody really cares, but I have my camera that's up here at like height, like eye level. So my screen is actually down here, and I can kind of out of my peripherals see like a green comment there. So I can't really see I can't really see the chat unless I'm like actually looking down, which I'm doing right now. So again, appreciate you, her, for everything you do. And just monitoring the chat is something that I do appreciate. But one other guy, well, actually, we have two other guys that I do want to discuss here. Ryan Bates.
Yeah, man.
We know that this has been a guy that Ryan Poles has liked for a while now. Trying
Ryan
to get.
Foles has got the Ryan Bates just itching at his claw. He just can't
Yep.
get it out. Like he just can't. He's not going to be satisfied until he figures out if that thing is right or not. And he's tried to go get him in the past. It didn't work. Obviously, last offseason, he was able to go get him with the intention of him being the Bears starting center. Ryan Poles said as
Mhm.
much. He had the injuries. Nate Davis missed some time during the summer. Ryan Bates filled in over there. Then he got his own injury. And so that never really came to materialize. But I think Ryan Poles is probably still curious about the Ryan Bates experiment.
I think so too. He played 105 snaps last season. And you made a really good point. Like, I think he still wants to see if this is a thing, if it's even a possibility, because you didn't get that opportunity because of injuries and all the things that Ryan Bates was dealing with. He had the concussion, and then he also was dealing. I forgot even what he was dealing with during training camp, where you had Shelton was starting at center, then Bates was starting at center, then
Yep.
Bates had an injury, and that kind of solidified things up to that point for who was going to be the starting center. But this is somebody that Ryan Poles wanted. He finally got him, and he hasn't been able to see what he can do on the football field. And even though you would be saving $4 million and there is no dead money with his contract, like the Bears, they not only do they need starting offensive linemen, they do need depth when that starting offensive lineman or linemen do go down at some point in the season. So I think there is a value to having a I don't think I could say quality depth, just depth, and Ryan Bates would provide that. But I think that Ryan Poles would want to see if Ryan Bates has any game left in him.
I think he just wants to know, man. I think he's just been curious about Ryan Bates as an offensive lineman for quite some time, and I think that he just wants to know. But it does matter that you do have the depth. Now, I don't think he can. I don't think there's any scenario where he can feel comfortable going into the season saying, "Okay, Ryan Bates is our answer at one of these three interior positions." So maybe he does try to figure that out. Maybe he does try and say, "Okay, well, if I do, get the dream scenario where you get Drew Dahlman and Trey." Smith, like I said earlier, and you get those two guys to play center and right guard, then maybe I can have Ryan Bates play left guard, or maybe I can draft a guy later to compete with Bates at left guard. And if the rookie doesn't come in and solidify the spot, I still feel okay about having Ryan Bates over there at left guard. So maybe he's thinking that. I think there is certainly some value to keeping him around the roster. And so I think because of that, and because of Ryan Poles' affinity for him, I think that he probably does find his way back onto the roster, unless the Bears really go about overhauling this entire thing and invest even more in the offensive line than I suspect they will. So I think he'll have a spot. I don't think there can be any way you can guarantee him a starting spot, but maybe he does compete with the rookie if you can fill those other two spots in the free agency.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking there, Herb. And the last guy I do want to discuss, and we'll both be in line on this one, but I'll bring him up just because I've seen this kind of circulating a little bit. And again, Bears Twitter is a very interesting place. We appreciate all of you and everybody who tunes in to these shows and supports us in what we're doing. But so TJ Edwards
Yeah.
is a guy where, I mean, technically you could, cut the cap saving would be 5.5 million if I'm looking at that correctly. Um, I just, yes, yes, you could save money, but man, you just don't cut good football players, man. We've talked about TJ Edwards a bunch, not only on this show,
Yeah.
but it just in when we're at Hallis Hall, whenever. Like TJ's making plays, and he is out there balling and just he's making his impact felt. And you don't just cut a guy like that to have 5.5 million when you're already you have the sixth most cap space in the NFL right now. It's like cap space is not an issue for the Bears. There are teams that have a lot more than the Bears, but if
Sure.
the Bears want to go out and be aggressive in free agency, they would have a pitch and they would be at the discussion table with whoever is there. They may not be able to reach the level that the New England Patriots have with where they're at number one in the league in cap space, but like you don't cut TJ Edwards. He will be on this football team this upcoming season. And Ben Johnson talked about the interior linebackers on this team in his introductory press conference and how much just impact they can have when you have guys like that. So TJ, I know you'll agree with me, Herb, but he's going to be on this football team.
There is no way the Bears get better by cutting TJ Edwards. He's a really, really good football player. You're talking about trying to save 5.5 million. You're going to give up 5.5 yards a carry if you get rid of that dude. That's what's going to happen. Like, he is a absolute playmaker. He understands what the defense is trying to do to the offense. He's able to diagnose things and react very, very well, which is why he's one of those guys. He's one of those Wisconsin linebackers that play a lot faster than they time, right? Like Jack Sanborn's the same way. They can read and diagnose things and they get downhill. And it's like, that dude shouldn't be playing that fast. Well, it ain't about a 40 speed. It's about your ability to read and react. And if you can do that, then you can play a lot faster than maybe people think that you are. And so TJ was just a playmaker. I don't want to talk anymore about him not being here. That's ridiculous.
Well, let's change to this guy. We just talked about Gerald Everett. He just had a tweet. Chicago,
Yeah.
it was brief and a learning experience, but I appreciate the love the city and the team showed me. Looking forward to the next chapter. On to the next. So looks like Gerald Everett and the Chicago Bears are parting ways there. And yeah, we talked about it. It makes sense that they would make that move. It's funny, the first, not the first interaction I had with Gerald Everett, but it was after the preseason game against the Buffalo Bills. I love to clip stuff on Twitter, and I think I was in the wrong too. Now that I look back at it, I was like getting feedback from people like, okay, no, you're right. But I showed a clip and I didn't directly like mention Gerald Everett, but I'm like, oh, they're both blocking the same defensive end. Now that leaves this line or the safety that's free to come off the edge and tackle Khalil Herbert. Herbert should have just went up the damn middle, but he started to bounce it outside. Then Everett clapped back at me and like said, "Hey, you should probably know what the play is." Like, you're not wrong, Gerald.
You're not wrong.
Appreciate the honest feedback.
You're not wrong. Right on cue, right as we talking about him, the news comes out that he gets cut, and I saw Stefan put that in the chat too. Shout out to you, Stefan. Yeah, I think that, listen, you get to this point in the season, and there starts to become questions about who may become cap casualties, who may not, and you're usually talking about good veteran football players who may be able to help you, but they may be costing you. And so that's why we have these conversations. And for some of these guys, like with Gerald Everett, it's a no. And then for other guys like TJ Edwards, it's a yes. And that's just the nature of the league. Some other team will value Gerald Everett more than the Bears. And good on the Bears for letting him know as early as possible that we don't value you in that way at this time. Let a veteran get out there on the market so that he can become an answer for some other team who could utilize him before they start to go about, filling in all those other options, right? It's going to be free agency really, really soon. And you want to give your veteran guys the respect of being out there on the market for that first wave so they can get, the best contracts and they can be in these conversations while these teams are looking for added pieces at tight end. So
no doubt.
Man. He's thinking he got some good football left in him somewhere.
Yeah, I think so too. And one real quick detail about the Bears signing Gerald Everett, Nick, and I want to say Corte. He does a really good job on Twitter. You need to follow him at Nick Korte. He does a really good job with these compensatory picks and what they mean for teams. And he just put out a tweet signing Gerald Everett for what turned out to be just one season for $6.5 million cost the Bears a 4th round 2025 compensatory pick for Darnell Mooney leaving for Atlanta. That would have been, nice to have another, let's say Ian Cunningham. That's also something that's still ongoing with Ian Cunningham's going to get the job in Jacksonville. The Bears will get a 3rd round draft pick this year and next year, but the Bears will not be getting a 4th round compensatory pick for Gerald Everett in the Darnell Mooney leaving to Atlanta. So just some more, that's again, those are things that happen when you sign guys and guys leave, go have the seasons that they do like Mooney did. The Bears will not be getting anything there in terms of compensatory pick. Where do we want to take this now, Herb? I know we have a couple more. We got to talk ticket prices, and then obviously the Bears have completed their full coaching staff. Where do you want to go?
Well, let's just talk about these ticket prices real quick, and we don't have to spend much time on it because it's really par for the course, right? Like the news came out, and it's going to be an average of 10% increase in ticket pricing. The Bears sent their letter out to the season ticket holders, and listen, is it a good look to increase your ticket prices after you go 5-12 and lose 10 straight games? No, it's not a good look. But it just is what it is. And the Bears know the same as I know that Bears fans are going to fill up that stadium. It's just what it is. And so unless you're going to have a collective contingent of Bears fans like, hell no, we ain't going, then whatever. They're going to continue to. I feel like they raise it every single year. They're going to continue to
Hmm.
do that. It just is what it is. It's the National Football League. It's the Chicago Bears, and people are going to go. And if not you, then somebody else is going to go, and that becomes the problem. That's why you can't. That's why it's so hard to have a revolt against the machine in 2025 in any
Hmm.
sense of society, because it's like, well, somebody's going to do it, and the people who need to feel the impact never really get a chance to feel the impact. So they're like, yeah, whatever. I don't think that, George McCaskey is going to be sitting up in his office like, hey, Bears fan X didn't come because Bears fan Y did come. So it doesn't really
Hmm.
matter. I think it's par for the course. And I think, people talk about it and because it's a news thing and that's cool, but it's whatever. The Bears raise the ticket price and Soldier Field will be packed.
Yeah, and look, I'm not surprised that the ticket prices went up. Like that's what always happens. It was 8% last year, increase is 10% this year. I think it was just, I don't know if it was the messaging that they kind of had on why, but like here's what was sent to the season ticket holders, or a part of it. It's part of our 2025 planning. We have taken diligent, deliberate steps to evaluate our overall ticketing structure, utilizing in-depth analytical methods is critical to creating informed organizational decisions. After careful and thoughtful consideration, incorporating market dynamics, industry trends, and a strong home schedule, okay, an average increase of 10% for our 2025 season ticket package will be instituted. Detailed season tickets renewal information will be emailed to you later today. Careful and thoughtful consideration. We want more money. Like we know we could get it. Like I wonder how thoughtful it honestly was in like the whole strong home schedule. You're gonna play Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit, and then the rest of the teams are on the home schedule. I I don't know. I don't know what I was looking for out of the statement, what like for them to say, but it wasn't surprising to me. Like it, and considering that, I don't know if 2024 was, it was one of the worst Bears seasons in terms of a losing streak, firing your coach mid-season for the first time in history of doing that, and just the expectations that you had, and like the demise that ended up being what that Bears season was. Like, yeah, it's still, I wasn't surprised that there was an increase, but yeah, I wonder how much detail and deliberate discussions were had. Like, if we can get 10 more, that's what
Yeah.
it's going to be.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
raise the prices by 10%, and then do it again next year, and then do it again the year after that. You also got to remember that the Bears have, if not they have one of the smallest seating capacities in the National Football League. I
True.
think Soldier Field holds about 64,000, and if you aren't going to have as many seats as another stadium, then you need to have each seat be worth more money. And so the Bears are going to continue to do that. It just is what it is. And so, they could have just came out and said, here are the new ticket prices, and this is what it is. And people are going to go for it. Shout out to Mike in the chat. He's saying that there's a 10-year waiting list, for season tickets.
Mm.
And that's true. I mean, and because of that, listen, if I know I got season tickets sold for 2034, like that, people who are just waiting to try and get on the list.
Yeah.
Am I really worried that y'all not coming to this day? Like, I mean? Like, I got people who want to get this ticket in 2034. So whatever, it'll be there, man. Same thing, conversation when you talk about the stadium in Arlington Heights, and you get some super Chicago people who are like, I'm not going out there. Bullshit. Everybody's going
You're
out there.
going.
Like, yes, you're going. Like, you're gonna go, and it's gonna be a great time. They're gonna build an awesome football world around that place, and it's going to be nice, and that's just what it is. And they'll make a train that goes from the city straight out there, and it'll be a whole thing, and people will go, and that's just what it is. The Bears won't be the only team that plays outside of the city in which they're named for. Dallas Cowboys, they play in Arlington. Coincidentally, they play in Arlington, Texas. Hell, the New York Jets and the New York Giants, they don't even play in the same state that they're named for. So like, it's like Like, whatever, man. You're gonna San Francisco ain't in San Francisco. The 49ers aren't in San Francisco. It's whatever.
I
It'll
mean,
be it'll
SoFi Stadium's in Inglewood. Like, I mean,
yeah, like
it goes on and on. It's not the
it'll
biggest
be what it
deal, and
is. Like,
it
just
will.
build a world class stadium that is very, very entertaining, that is lucrative, and people won't care, man. Once they open that thing up on opening night and they have all the festivities and everything going on around it, people are gonna love it. It's gonna be a phenomenal, phenomenal place. Kevin Warren just has to keep working his angle to get the taxes to where the Bears need them to be.
Get that shovel in the ground, Kevin Warren. We're waiting for to hear actual news on the stadium. But yeah, Soldier Field, 61,500 is the smallest stadium in the NFL. Then you have State Farm Stadium, home of the Arizona Cardinals, right after that. All right, Herb, let's end our discussion here today because the Bears have finally finalized their 2025 coaching staff. And, you know, we were kind of waiting for this at this
Yeah.
point. Like every other team was at least announced it, or they're already having some media availability for some of their coaches. And no, now the Bears can say they at least have their staff in place. And you know, I mean, there wasn't at that before they announced it, there was only maybe a couple of people that were still like they were still
Yeah.
actually trying to find to finalize the staff. But is there when you look at the staff in its totality, and I don't know if you have it in front of you or had a chance to look at it, like I mean,
hmm
when you think of 2025 Bears and their coaching staff, what kind of stands out to you, or what do you make of the group that Ben Johnson's placed in his first year as an NFL head coach?
Experience would be the word that jumps out to me. Um, and I think that's an interesting thing considering you have a first time head coach. I think having experience was going to be essential to him building a good staff. And you look and you see experience all around him. His defensive coordinator is extremely experienced as a defensive coordinator, also has experience as a two-time head coach. You've got Coach Hightower, extremely experienced, widely regarded as one of the best special teams coordinators in the league. Then you get into his assistants, and he brings over Antoine Randall, who's not only his wide receivers coach, but his assistant head coach. You got JT Barrett, who's a good quarterback in his own right, who's going to be tutoring, who's going to be responsible for the tutelage of Caleb Williams on a daily basis on all the different small things. I think that matters. You look at a guy like Eric Bieniemy, and so you brought in a ton of experience on this coaching staff, and I think that matters. And then you pair that up with the youth and the exuberance of not only a Ben Johnson, but a guy like a Declan Doyle who wants to get in there, wants to do some of the dirty work and grind for some of those things. And so I think he's put together a really, really good staff. You retain, Jim Dre. We talked about tight ends a lot throughout the course of this conversation. So I think I'm just interested in kind of getting to know some of these guys as they go. You got Al Harris is going to be working with some of those corners. I think that's going to be really, really good for a guy like Jalen Johnson because Al Harris was a really good corner in this league for a long time and an extreme competitor. He's going to be able to not only help Jalen, but also help Tyreek. He's got a
Yeah.
similar build in terms of that long arm guys likes to get their hands on people, be physical. He's of course the guy who will always be remembered for the we want the ball and we're going to score game with Matt Hasselbeck in overtime up at Lambeau. Al Harris jumped in front of that pass and took it to the crib. So I think he's going to be a great addition. So that experience is just again that's the word that jumps out to me as I kind of scroll through and look at the coaches they brought onto the staff.
Yeah, there's definitely experience. Another guy just to highlight here, Daniel Sharp for the offensive line.
Yeah.
That is somebody regarded as one of the best at what he does, and was with Tulane recently, and then had all the time with the New Orleans Saints, where he wasn't just always O line. He worked the tight ends, run game coordinator, but had three Pro Bowlers on that line at one point when he was coaching the O line. So that's another guy I'm excited to see. One guy that again, like you, I'm really curious to just meet these people and kind of get to know them. But somebody that's going to obviously have such a very important role on this team, a guy like Jeremy Garrett, defensive line coach, and just seeing like what can he bring to this unit that we need to just see more out of the entire group.
Yep.
Montez Sweat included, but everybody, but a veteran of over 15 years of NFL collegiate and high school level experience there, was recently with the Jaguars, but that's a guy that, curious to see his philosophy, how he's going to coach the position and get the most out of the guys that they have there. Cause you still want to see guys like Gervon Dexter take that next step as he enters year 3. You want to see
Got
what
to.
he can do with DeMarcus, if DeMarcus is still on this team, Montez, all those guys, and Booker,
Austin
like you
Booker.
mentioned
Yep.
earlier.
Hmm.
Like we need to see what a guy like Garrett is going to do with that group. But I think it is man, I would have to see and compare like how many again the coaches here, how much I feel like there's more at this group than maybe there was even in last year. Maybe I'm just wrong, just seeing like how long this list is, but the guys have a bunch of support and it comes with a lot of experience. Guys that are maybe doing some of these roles for the first time, but I think it's a good mix. And to be completely honest, I'm not going to go and tell you that this is the greatest coaching staff the Bears
Right.
have ever assembled because I need to see what they do on the football field. Like all this is great now in the offseason, but man, let's see how it all plays out come, September when that first regular season game is being played and see how each one of these respective position groups plays. Because it
Nick,
looks
you know what
good
makes
in terms.
great coaches?
Would you say that? Would you say
You
Herb?
know what? You know what makes great coaches?
Players make some great coaches.
Get some great players, man.
Yeah.
Get some great players. We've talked about, the Bears offensive line coach and who it is from Harry Haston to like just go all the way back. It's like always like, well, do the Bears have a good O-line coach? And get good O-linemen and you will have a good O-line coach. Like
Yeah.
that's it. That's really what it boils down to. I'm not trying to diminish what these coaches bring individually. And I'm certainly not trying to say that these players do not need to be coached. But if you have elite talent, that coach is going to look damn good, right? So yeah, you like give the Eagles offensive line coach, give him the Bears O line last season, and then see if we think as highly of him as we do with him being in Philly. And there has to be a marriage there. It goes together. So I
Mhm.
don't want to take away the credit, but all I'm saying is I've never seen a good coach win a Super Bowl with bad players. Never seen it. That's just not the reality of it. You have to have good players. And so if you can get some good players, you're going to have a good offensive line coach, and you're going to have a good defensive line coach, and you're going to have a good linebackers coach and a great secondary coach because you have good DBs. Like that's just what it is. And so do
Mhm.
you want to be able to challenge those guys and push their buttons and deploy them the right way? Absolutely, all of that matters. But that's going to be the icing on the cake more so than it is. Let me take a bunch of subpar players and then make them into like that's no. No, you need to invest in the good players. You get some top 10 offensive linemen and some high price offensive line free agents, you're gonna have a pretty good offensive line.
I mean, yeah, that I couldn't say it better myself, though, Herb. You need both. You need both the players and coaches to hold their own weight in this. If one side is not doing their job, then I think you'll see both. You won't see it as successful as it would be if both the coaches, the players are having that buy-in and playing to the best of their ability, coaching to the best of their ability. But as it stands today, I am excited about the group. I'm not going to lie, but I
Yeah.
will. We have to all wait and see. Like we've done this, Herb. We've been doing this way too many times, where you get the staff in place, and you're looking forward to what could be that upcoming season, and then for whatever reasons, things just do not translate to what maybe those expectations were in the off season to what they are in the regular season. So
Yeah.
it's a
People
group with optimism.
I love Coach Travis Smith, who's had been the Bears
Yeah.
defensive line coach for the past several years. In terms of talking ball, he's just somebody that I really, really enjoy talking ball with. I like the way his football brain works. But people like, he sucks. You got to get Travis Smith out of here. It's like, well, we got to get Travis Smith some elite defensive linemen. That's what we got to do. Like that's just what it is. And so, sure, you're going to be disappointed in him or whoever, unless you're going to go out and get some guys. And so, you get a Montez Sweat. Now you go get somebody else on the other side. The defensive line
Mhm.
coach will look really, really good. But until you got the players, all these coaches are just going to be okay. But I do think, just in terms of on paper, the staff that he's filled out is a really, really good one. Now go get them some players. Otherwise, you're going to be disappointed in their production as well.
Absolutely. Actually, you mentioned uh, Smith there,
Yeah.
Travis. His dad is coaching the linebackers there, Herb, with the Bears, and Richard Smith.
I did not know that was his dad.
Yeah, so I was looking it up. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not making this up. Richard Smith who's going to coach the linebackers for the Bears now that Dave Borgonzi's in Indianapolis with Matt
Yeah,
Eberflus, or not Indianapolis,
in
sorry, Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah,
But Richard Smith is the father of Travis Smith,
dig
and
that.
he'll be coaching the linebacker. So we'll see if Richard is anything like Travis in terms of how he breaks down ball. But looking forward to meeting him and all these coaches. And you know what, Herb? Next week in Indianapolis for the NFL scouting combine,
Indy.
all these guys will be here. They'll all be around. We just gotta go out there, socialize, and see who we run into. It's always a fun time down in Indy. But Herb and I will be down there,
I'm
and
looking forward to it,
cannot
man. It's
wait.
gonna be a good time. Make sure y'all keep it locked on our Twitter pages,
Yep.
at Nick Moreano, at Herb Howard 411. We'll be bringing you guys content here to the Big's YouTube page, and we will be covering the NFL scouting combine, man. My first one, I'm excited about it, man. So definitely glad to be working it with you, man. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned for all the different conversations and content that we will be bringing from down there. If you tuned in late to the show, this is the Nick and Herb show. That is what we have decided to call it. That is what it shall be.
Super creative. We're super excited, but this is the Nick and Herbert show, and you'll definitely catch us next week as we're down in Indianapolis getting a bunch of great content. But appreciate everybody for coming in, hanging out, just talking in the chat, the super chats as well. Throw this up there on screen, Jason. Appreciate the $4.99 from earlier in the
Definitely
show, but
appreciate that.
yep, we couldn't be here and talking ball. Oh, I guess we could be doing it without you. We'd just be doing it in front of nobody, which we're fine with
Right.
because Herb and I love talking ball, but we
We
love
would
having you
talk ball
guys
to a
here.
brick wall, but it's better with
Yeah,
y'all.
it is. It's way better with you guys. But hey, appreciate everyone from hanging out. And this is the Nick and Herb show, and we'll see you guys next week.